specialists doing their own works, and Babe Ruth playing a 9-inning game in his prime in the 20s in a modern video, DVD, audio, copy, and all that. These we wouldn't get variations because we know how these individuals look like. So that's the two questions I'd like to ask you.
Well, the individual I saw being crucified, who the project had concluded was Jesus of Nazareth, I think the closest depiction of him would be perhaps the El Greco rendering of Jesus. This individual was very thin, had very dark hair, aquiline features, a very narrow face, droopy eyes.
How old was he?
He looked his age.
40 years old, as the modern scholars say. He was born 4 B.C. or 6 B.C. Would you say he's about 40 or 30 or 33?
He could have been. I couldn't really say whether he was anywhere from 33 to 40, but he was certainly in that age range.
And did he have nails in his wrist like the Holy Shroud predicts, or traditional?
Yes, he was. Well, the one thing that was conspicuous to a child, who was growing up in the Roman Catholic tradition and seeing what was being purported to be the actual crucifixion of Jesus, was that he wasn't on a cross. This individual was on a pole, and there was a very short cross piece, and that he had been nailed to through the wrists, maybe about a 3-foot cross beam on something that looked about the size of a modern telephone pole. And he was in a great deal of anguish, and that was quite disturbing to see. There was a crown of thorns. I mentioned the women who came to pray at the foot of his cross, and also the Roman centurion reaching up to lance him in the side. But let me just say, in reference to your question, or in response to it rather, he did not resemble the face in the shroud at all. That individual looks much more august and robust.
But remember what you said yourself, and what the saints have said themselves. There are variations. I mean, there are different variations of him. And even the saints had different. Aida, Sister Aida of Spain, and Catherine Emmerich, that Mel Gibson had his Passion of Christ go by. They both had different variations of Christ. And like you had said earlier, going back in the past or whatever, there was different variations of certain events or certain scenes or whatever.
Right. And Andy, don't you also think, though, that a 40-year-old of that era would look much older than a 40-year-old of this era?
Certainly, and this individual was very emaciated and was in a great deal of pain. I would say that he certainly looked like depictions of Jesus. I would say that the actor that was cast in the Mel Gibson production, that wasn't very far off, although he looked a little bit more Mediterranean than that, or Middle Eastern.
Was that James Cabiel? I don't know how he pronounced it.
Yeah, the individual in the documentary that I was watching, of ostensibly the actual crucifixion, was more swarthy looking, more of a Middle Eastern phenotype, very thin, as if he had been starving for weeks or even longer and suffering for a great deal of time before he was crucified. Regarding the caller's second question regarding the great individuals in the past, I think that's one of the positive potentials of Chronovision that undergirds my Truth campaign regarding these quantum access technologies. Imagine being able to go into the National Archives in Washington, D.C., and seeing Bach perform, or seeing the U.S. Constitution being signed. I mean, we can watch modern events that have been filmed, let's say Martin Luther King giving the I Have a Dream speech, and be profoundly moved. Imagine what would happen culturally if we could go to virtual museums and libraries where a protectorate that would be in control of the Chronovision technology so that it couldn't be abused to violate people's privacy, but that would uphold a high standard of quantum access and allow the public to view different significant and inspiring moments in history. I think that would culturally be a very profound resource. So in that sense, I think we should start thinking about using these quantum access technologies to spark a cultural renaissance in our global civilization as a result of going back and viewing inspiring moments from the past, not just in American history, but in all of world history.
How did you feel about your father allowing you to go through this program? Did you ever get upset with him, or were you happy about it?
Then and now, I feel like he permitted me to enjoy a profound cosmic privilege. Certainly one of the funny scenes in the movie is going to be the fact that there was a point where I had a little temper tantrum, and I said to one of his friends in Albuquerque, he doesn't give me credit for anything, And in fact, he wasn't giving me credit for serving in a classified defense project where time travel was going on, and I was responsible for undertaking it. So we shared in a special way as father and son in the program. I think perhaps the abiding human or literary theme of my book is that we're all alive for only a brief moment in time. And the kind of interludes that I had with my father when we were serving together on Project Pegasus now have a very profound resonance with me. And I'm glad that we were able to essentially participate as father and son at the dawn of the time-space age. I view it as an incredible privilege that we had, not just as father and son, but simply as human individuals who were there at literally the inception of time travel and the time-space age. So I look back with great fondness and some sense of poignancy about the fact that my father is deceased and he can't share in this next phase of my life where I'm bringing public attention to the fact that these technologies were developed and that we should be trying to enhance their positive potential and prevent their negative potential. I think he'd be quite proud of me.
Let's go to Jennifer in Cincinnati, Ohio. Hi, Jennifer.
Yes, hello. Well, I have to ask, since we have had this technology for 40 years now, and we were able to develop it in the first place, I think common sense would say that if there are other intelligent species and civilizations out there, that they would come across this technology too. So did you meet any extraterrestrials in your time travels, and did they look human?
That's a very complicated question. I'm going to go into some of this in the book. I had a set of contact experiences as a child with the Greys that I really don't think add a lot to the discussion about human ET contact. When I went and I plotted everything that happened in Pegasus, and then I examined where these episodes of extraterrestrial contact occurred, obviously I was examining whether my memories of having served in Project Pegasus resulted from extraterrestrial contact. I was trying to disprove that premise in the same way that I was controlling for other factors like fantasy, delusion, government mind control, mistake, and so forth. And what I ended up finding, and I think does add to the whole study of extraterrestrial or interdimensional human contact, is they seem to have been appearing as a result of the fact that I was appearing in the realm that they occupy, that they are operational in, which is the supraluminal realm of fourth and fifth dimension functioning. So I'm going to describe in the book, for example, one time I was moving forward in time in the Montauk chair. One of the quantum access technologies is the chair described in the Montauk Project books by Preston Nichols and Peter Moon, which is essentially a magnetic transducer that prompts an astral projection of a person's consciousness to subjective moments in their own personal futures. In other words, it works a form of psycho-spiritual time travel. And during one of those probes to my own future, the forward momentum stopped, and I looked to my right, and there were 4 gray extraterrestrials observing me, and then I continued to move forward. So I guess what I'm implying here, or describing, is that there seemed to be extraterrestrial or interdimensional monitoring of some of the time-space exploration activities that DARPA sent me on. And I think maybe that's a contribution to the whole discussion of who or what the extraterrestrials are and what realm of consciousness or reality they're actually functioning in. It's actually the higher time-space dimensions, I believe. I do not believe that they're necessarily biological creatures. I think they are, in fact, interdimensional creatures of a higher order.
All right, let's go to John in San Francisco. Hey, John, thanks for calling.
Oh, yeah. What an incredible program. I have a few questions. Hopefully I can get through them all real quick. George sort of touched on the first one. What did you feel about your father, volunteering you for this project, top secret project, where he didn't know if you were going to come back alive or not? I mean, I find that hard to believe that you share some kind of pride with that. The second question is, you mentioned that somehow this teleportation can help our environmental or some other civilian problems that we're experiencing here on Earth. How exactly can this technology do that? Because you didn't go into details on that. And number 3, if your story is true, why are you even allowed to talk about this? I mean, this is pretty heavy-duty stuff.